Welcome to On the Issues. I'm Councilman Jim Waring. And joining me on today's show is Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Phoenix, Chris Mackay. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think first time. I hadn't realized this is an oversight on my part, so we're thrilled to have you here. You play an integral role in the city's success. All the council members think you're awesome. Please don't get a big head. And so well respected. It's one of the things that we all agree on is the work that you do is extremely important to us. So do you want to talk a little bit about your background, how you came to work for Phoenix?
Sure, I'd love to. So I've been in commercial real estate nearly my entire career. My very first job to totally age me was in 1986 and worked on the team that managed the security center complex here in downtown Phoenix. And at that time, there was a Jack in the Box where City Hall sits today. So a far different downtown Phoenix. And took a job with the city of Chandler in 1998 as part of their economic development team. Worked there, left there as the director in 2014 when I came to work here for the city of Phoenix.
You had a lot of experience, I knew, when you came well recommended. But you do a lot of things that I think might surprise people. You want to talk about what your day-to-day activities are like? Yeah,
I get to do crazy cool things on a daily basis. So my job and my team's job is to bring jobs into Phoenix, help our existing companies grow, bring new companies, work with international companies, biosciences companies, advanced manufacturing, and help new development come to Phoenix. So really, you can use a lot of $5 words for what we do, but our job really is to add wealth and add jobs into the community. But I get to work on crazy cool things and often get calls for, helping issues that we have at our parks or helping issues that we have on attracting a new company in that otherwise might find challenges in coming here. Most recently we've landed a number of companies from Asia. Well, one of the things that you don't think of is that as executives are coming here to help open those companies, their primary language is not English. They're incredible English speakers, but when medical issues happen, they prefer to go to their national language. And so finding doctors that they could call quickly if they had a medical issue when they were here that speak Mandarin or speak speak Korean or speak other languages are some of the fun things we get to work on daily.
So I have a couple questions in this vein, but I guess I'll start since you talked about the international book of business that you have. So you talked about one example of something that I probably wouldn't have thought of if left to my own devices that people might ask for. But why would overseas companies think of Phoenix first? We're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Los Angeles. What do they tell you when, hey, we're interested in Phoenix? Or do you go out and search for them?
Councilman, a little bit of both. So we were not even in the top 50 cities that international companies thought of just 10 short years ago. We were usually an afterthought. The cities you mentioned are exactly what they would normally think of. Los Angeles and San Francisco, New York, Chicago, kind of those big cities were ones that would typically come to top of mind with them. And we really worked to leverage our sister cities relationships. We have these great business relationships and these great delegations that are more on the cultural side, more on the education side, more on the youth ambassador side. And we got together with them, the economic development side of the house and the sister city side of the house, and said, how can we leverage your boards, the people that already have great relationships in these cities, to bring and connect us to economic development or jobs generating activities? And we've been doing that now for, my goodness, about six years now that we've been leveraging that, and it has just gone miles for us. What those companies are telling us they're looking for is, particularly following the pandemic or after the pandemic hit, they realized how much their product is stuck in these foreign countries, are stuck in these international locations. If something bad were to happen, they found, number one, these international companies were shutting down in their countries, and then once they were back up, getting their products in through our ports and in through our ports of entry, and then they would get here and our companies would be shut down. So it really became top of mind for them to not work in such a just-in-time fashion of getting the products here to market, but to opening companies here in Arizona that could benefit the entire country. They weren't so dependent on our ports of entry in other countries. And what they find they're looking for is two things. They really want to find a place that they feel welcome, They want to find a place that they feel connected. You know, imagine that you leave and you go to another country to open a business and you're kind of stuck. You don't speak the language. You don't understand, you know, zoning issues or ordinances or how your kids go to school. And that's what we help them with. Is we've made great connections to our school districts and our superintendents. We've made great connections to just banks and legal issues that they have in opening leases. And so have had such a tremendous opportunity in connecting to these these internationally based companies, so much so that just recently Phoenix was named in the top 6 of where foreign investors want to invest their money.
That's a fantastic testament to your work. So now the flip side is, do you ever go out and target, boy, this would really be great in Phoenix, or this is a weakness that we have to diversify our economy? Hey, I wonder if that company would be interested in moving. Do you go sort of, for lack of a better word, poach like that, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do. We go as part of a delegation into a number of strategically targeted companies or countries. And what we're looking for is, we were charged with diversifying our economy. As you know, in the Great Recession, Arizona was probably hit harder than any other state in the union. And we were so dependent on growth back then. We were so dependent on home building and industrial building and retail building that when that all came to a crashing halt in early 2009, revenue into the cities just stopped almost overnight. And it really showcased how much we were dependent on growth. And we were charged by City Council to go out and diversify that economy, to make it so we were as recession-proofed as we possibly could be. And so what we were looking for, what City Council charged me and my team with, was to go out and find companies in lots of different areas, not in call centers, not in retirement, not in golf courses, but in those knowledge-based economies. Where could we work in advanced manufacturing and in sustainability and in cyber and IT and biosciences and healthcare, those things that no matter what the economy is doing have to keep growing. And so we targeted strategically the best in the business. Where could we go find companies who are at the top of their game? As an example, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, they have been #1 in market capitalization in semiconductor manufacturing for a very long time. They're the only semiconductor company in the world that manufactures at 5 and 3 nanometer. And why that's so important is because those are the technologies that go into our most advanced devices. They go into our military devices. They go into our devices that protect our country. But they also, as we get our technology smaller, we get Apple Watches, we're getting devices that go into our ears and others, those devices have to be incredibly small. So that technology is cutting edge. And so we went after them with a ferocity that started in 2016 and ended in 2020 with them announcing a location here. But we were also looking, under Council's guidance, what are those companies that have a great economic multiplier? And what I mean by that, their supply chain would follow them. We've now had about 40 companies from all over the world, not just Asia, but from the Netherlands, from Germany, from Japan, from Taiwan, and from the United States that have come to set up shop here because of them. Another great example is Kudelski. They are a Swiss-based company, a strong company in cybersecurity. And under the leadership of the Mayor and Council and the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, we went after them and brought them back here to, they're actually in your district, and they are an incredible cybersecurity company. And then Carlisle is an advanced manufacturing company that's located up in Kierland. We brought them in. They're a Fortune 700 company with great presence on an international, while their corporate headquarters is here in the US. They have a great international presence, and brought them back here in 2015-16 to expand, and they've got hundreds of jobs here in Phoenix. But again, really wide, diverse range of what we're looking for. We are now working, we located Red Optima, who has a traffic signal focus and GIS out of London, and out of Dubai, we have Zorro Signs, who is a secure cyber document signing company. But again, really diversified, high wage, economic multiplying jobs.
Well, I know that what you talk about is certainly true about the diversification. So I've seen enough presentations by noted economists here in the Valley that talk about our less reliance, to put it inarticulately, on housing and development, where that was, like you said, almost a majority in 2006 or 2007. Now it's one component of a much greater whole. And I know you worked a lot with the governor's office, particularly when Governor Ducey's administration was in office. When you talked about delegations, I assume you're working with the state as well, and they had a lot of the same goals, I know.
The Arizona Commerce Authority under Governor Ducey is, and now under the new governor, they're a tremendous asset of ours. And so we work closely. In fact, Governor Ducey was at the table as we were negotiating with TSMC. He was helping us break down barriers with the U.S. Department of Commerce and with things that they needed to come here. Sandra Watson, the CEO of the Commerce Authority, there wasn't a day that went by that she and I weren't together on calls to Taiwan working with these. In fact, we have a delegation that will be going to Asia here again this summer, and the Arizona Commerce Authority is a close ally and partner and will be right there with us.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've talked about international, but we also sometimes borrow companies from other states. So you want to talk a little bit about that, because some of the things that you talked about, the language, maybe that's still would be an issue with a company that's already in the United States, but probably not as much as a company that's coming from overseas. Some of the other things you talked about were more specific to companies coming from out of country. What's it like recruiting against other states? Or if someone's going to build a new plant, how do we compete with the Chicagos and New Yorks of the world?
When I first started in this industry a long, long time ago, we really didn't have much to compete with. We were competing with, kind of sunshine and a universities that weren't as stellar as they are today and in their workforce creation. So as we kind of moved through the Great Recession, as you know, at the state legislature side, you gave us a lot of tools back then that we were able to use to move Arizona forward, move Phoenix forward, and be able to become very competitive for a lot of different companies. Not giveaways. These are performance-based programs that help companies level the playing field, and they have done exactly what they were supposed to do. As we are on a national level, as you can imagine, California is pretty easy for us to compete with these days. We kind of have to, as we like to say, shooting fish in a barrel. I hate to say that, but the over-regulation of California has become a strong draw for Arizona. You're within an hour and a half flight coming in, so we recruit a lot in California. Chicago, with their government regulations, has become Illinois, has become a state we work with a lot to be able to bring new companies in. In fact, I think our number one and number two companies that we attract are California and Illinois. New York has become a less desirable place. I think we've really become known as this great place to be new, this great place to collaborate. When you think about how Arizona was founded, Phoenix was, I would argue, a place where a city probably shouldn't have been founded, and a time when you think about the pioneers that got here and said, let's set up stakes right here in this desert. But it was done with innovation, it was done with collaboration, and that's never changed. And that's what our companies are looking for. And I would argue today, our easiest selling point is our workforce, is the citizens who voted with their feet and either relocated to Arizona, we're the fastest growing city in the country, but also the brain drain has stopped. Because of the companies that we've recruited here, we no longer are losing that great workforce out of ASU or U of A or NAU or GCU or our community colleges. We're not losing them to Silicon Valley anymore. Those companies are here, and citizens and our graduates are voting by staying here in Arizona. They're raising their families here. And that's a study that we had done with U of A and ASU a number of years ago. Texas and Arizona were number one and number two for job creation for Silicon Valley. And that isn't the case anymore. Those graduates are staying here and raising their families here.
Well, I know companies have come from Silicon Valley to District 2. Obviously, I'm rooting for the entire city. It's great if companies can come to District 2, but of course, I'm frankly equally satisfied if a great company comes anywhere in Phoenix, or really even the region. I am a regionalist by nature, so I'm excited whenever a company comes to Maricopa County. I will say, though, it's great if they come to Phoenix, and sometimes companies do move, as we just had in District 2 here the last couple months. A big company chooses to move from one side of the street to another, like Discount Tire.
Yes.
And so you want to talk a little bit about that process, because I don't think we're out actually trying to steal companies or
Right.
businesses from other cities, but sometimes cities aren't as enamored with their current port of call and are looking for another place to land. And I assume with your reputation, you're probably one of the first points of contact for them. So you want to talk a little bit about how that works?
Absolutely. So we have a protocol in economic development. We do not hunt in other cities. We do not go into other cities. That's not good for anybody. So we're very, very cautious about any work that we do in other cities. But there are times when companies, they outgrow their building, they find that they would have a better location, more what their culture and what they're trying to create in their brand identity happens to be better in another city. As an example, Choice Hotels recently relocated out of Phoenix, moved across the street into Scottsdale. There was a better building for them there and a better brand identity for them there. And so we work closely with the other cities. When a company lets us know that they're thinking about moving across the street, as you mentioned, we let the other economic development team know that this is happening. We don't do it under dark of night. But in that instance, there was a broker that represents Discount Tire. He and I had a very long relationship. He reached out to me to let me know they wanted to stay in the area, that was where their workforce lived, and they felt like they wanted to stay in the very close proximity, but there wasn't a site in that area for Scottsdale that worked for them. They were looking for much more of an open type of campus, a sustainable. They really wanted to create a brand identity and create a place where their workforce could be outside, they could walk, they could really feel like they were creating this great location for their workforce. And so we had worked with them at looking at a couple of sites in Desert Ridge, and they ended up landing, no pun intended, on kind of west of Tatum over by the MIM. And what was critical to Discount Tire was they wanted to ensure that when someone built around them, they'd never have their view corridor blocked. They wanted to make sure that their workforce had a great working environment. So they picked a site that's right on Reach 11, and they're working with us to do some improvements outside the south side of where they'll be building on Reach 11. But where they angled and where they located was so there would always have great views of the mountains and the desert from their building. And that was a great location for them. And as I said, we made sure Scottsdale knew as they were moving along, and just like Scottsdale let us know when Choice Neighborhoods was working with them.
And I'm sure Scottsdale wasn't thrilled about Discount Tire moving, but in fairness, they had, as you suggest, very specific needs that could be filled at the Desert Ridge site. And so, it's a huge footprint, what they're building, but also that impacts neighbors and traffic and so forth. So, as you know, I put you in touch with the
Yes.
appropriate citizenry and leaders up there. But can you talk a little bit about how that works to make sure it makes sense for the current residents of Phoenix? Because they're the people who have built all this and want to make sure they're satisfied too with what they see coming down the pike.
Well, and I think the conversations you introduced us to with the community of Desert Ridge as we were working with Discount Tire, we were able, not just from a traffic count standpoint, an engineer can write anything they want on a paper and you think you're solving for the solutions, but talking to the people who live with it day in and day out, where are they seeing the bottlenecks? Where are they seeing the challenges? And then we went back to our streets department, our traffic engineering department, and had them run the models based on what our real citizenry is seeing. And the groups that you connected to us were of such benefit. We were able to sit down with them, work through those issues, and gained 100% of their support. So Discount is, what this led us to is Discount's not only doing the improvements on Mayo, the improvements on Tatum, the improvements to the ingress egress to the 101, but it really enlightened the state land department, who owns so much of the land in the area, that we were now able to attach very specific street improvements that aren't necessarily right adjacent to those properties where they were causing challenges on Deer Valley, on Pinnacle Peak, farther north on 56th Street and on 48th Street, to particular land auctions. So when they're auctioned, whoever buys them already knows where those pinch points are and is able to put in those traffic improvements as soon as they start their development. So I think we are going to use what you helped us create in Desert Ridge kind of across the city in looking at how can we ensure that those that are coming in the future in working with our citizens, know where we see those pinch points.
Well, you stumbled into something that I was going to bring up, so I appreciate that. By talking to the citizens, you not only potentially solve problems and pushback for the current project, but one goal of mine, when you have a project of this size, you're almost inevitably setting a template, you're setting sort of the ground rules, you're setting sort of this is what the citizens who live there would like to see. And so Discount Tire is solving some of those problems, but future developers, folks who might move into that area, now know, here's kind of what the expectation is. Here are some of the things that they're going to ask for, because now it's all written down. It's not a mystery anymore. People have thought about it. Here's what we'd like. The village planning process, obviously, that this project was part of. They're representatives of Desert Ridge and others as well, but certainly, usually on a project of this size, there's at least a couple residents who live pretty close by. That's what happened in this case. There were some specific requests. It didn't go through just, it's great the way it is. Their feedback is always incorporated into these projects.
Their feedback was incredibly important to these projects, because I think what it really helps to do is not only for our citizens, of course, who we're of course paying attention to, they live there, we want to make sure we don't cause them any more harm, but I think it's helpful for the companies too, as they think about adding 1,000 new employees into the area. They don't want their employees to get grumpy. How long is it going to take them to get out of their particular place of employment? And I think engaging early and having our citizens at the table, talking directly with the companies, talking with me, talking with their site selectors about what they see, it really turned into such a great opportunity. So we have another corporate headquarters we're working with in your district right in the area. And to your point, they already know the playbook now. They know their particular parcel, not only what their traffic counts are going to show they need to do adjacent to their parcels, but they know the impacts they're going to have to the entire traffic region, the system that's in that particular area. And we're working through with them. They know it's not something that we're going to negotiate with. They know this was important, and I think it's given us a tremendous path forward as we work with other companies. Another example, we had a company that approached us, and they weren't something that fit in the zoning. And so we were able to show them, this is what you're going to have to do, and you're probably not the best use for this area of what the community wants. And we were able to show them another area where I think they'll be really successful, where it was an area where the community really did want them.
Well, and you bring up a good point. You and I've had many of these discussions. Sometimes one or both of us is sort of like, I don't know if this is going to fit where they're talking about going. And they'll be doing a disservice to them to kind of lure them in, and then it's a big fight, and the neighbors are unhappy, which frankly would make me unhappy. So we have redirected companies to other places, sometimes even other cities where they might fit a little better in the grand scheme of things. That's not a reflection on them. It doesn't mean that that's not a company that we didn't value or want if they're coming from somewhere else that we wouldn't like to sort of lure into our web. But realistically, not everything gets a yes from the city of Phoenix, and we don't always get a yes from these companies.
Right.
So you want to talk a little bit about like what are some of the things that companies that take a pass on us, what do they say? Like what can we do better?
Well, and I think too, when what you had just mentioned a little bit ago, there are companies, we're actually really selective as to the companies that we want into Phoenix. Council has given us a great strategic economic development plan that we work from. You know where you want Phoenix to be at build out. You know what you want our jobs to be. Our citizens have told you what they want Phoenix to be like. So we do take a pass on quite a number of companies. I'll pick up the phone and call one of the other cities and say, hey, this just isn't a good fit for Phoenix, but I think this would be a tremendous fit for you. Would you like me to make an introduction? With some of the most recent advanced manufacturing that we've located, we've called other cities, even outside Maricopa County, and said, I think these are going to be a much better fit for you on the job site, and it's working brilliantly. We're creating this amazing ecosystem in the region, and not just because the city of Phoenix, everybody likes to think that we're the big 800-pound gorilla and we grab everything, but I think we're showing, to your point, you're very regionally focused, and I think it's showing that we really do care about all the cities that are around us, and we might win the big fish, but the other fish that come to swim next to them really to provide a tremendous benefit to the region. And now you've hit me where I hurt. I'm not a fan of losing things. It is, as you know, I don't take no lightly. It's not my favorite word.
But you can learn a lot from it.
I do learn a lot from it. I do learn a lot. We pivot on ways we know we learn from those losses that we have. And sometimes it's the regulatory environment that we have here. And we don't hear that often, but sometimes it is the regulatory environment. Sometimes it is because we have had a lot of successes as of late in some of the more advanced industry sectors. There's some concern by companies that we'll have a saturation. We won't have enough of a workforce for them in those particular areas. And some, they want to go near universities that have a little more expertise in independent technologies or things. And quite frankly, Councilman, there are states that can write checks to companies and get them to go here. And you and I have talked about it together. That's not the way you do economic development. That is a company that's looking...
Substantial checks. I think the word you were looking for before that was substantial. Because we've seen some sort of, where we had sort of sticker shock. It's like, well, we can't do that.
No, and nor should we.
Right.
Nor should we. Those are companies that are following the money. We want to create the place, and we've worked so hard as a city and as a region to create a place where companies feel successful, that they find what they're looking for to make their company most successful. And if they're following the money, good for them. That's wonderful.
Can't blame them, but it's just not the way we do business.
But it's amazing the number of companies that when that financial incentive runs out, that we find them at our doorstep again looking for really that best place to do business.
Yeah, and I can't remember hearing about a company that we've worked with or that you've worked with in another part of the city that came back and said, boy, I'm sorry I made that decision. I mean, I can't think of one. Maybe it's happened. Wouldn't want to necessarily highlight it here even if it happened. But I feel pretty good that the companies that came here have been satisfied that they landed in the right spot. I was sort of amused. Nothing against the state and the city that I'm going to mention here, but I've seen, in the last few years, one was just the last couple weeks, the number one city for everybody's happiness was Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I think at one point, the number one state for, economic development was South Dakota. And I always sort of wonder what the out-migration from Phoenix or Arizona to Green Bay, Wisconsin is. And I wonder what the out-migration, well, I'll put it this way, out-migration from people who don't have relatives or grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Right.
There's a guy from Illinois, same thing. If you got a sick mom or you got to go back for some personal reason, that's something I would argue it's a little different.
Right.
And move in South Dakota. I don't know that I really see that as our competition, but that's what some of the, the smart people set will tell us. I always think that's ridiculous, but that's just the way I guess the numbers shake out for them. But for us, I look at the developments, and I'll just speak in District 2, it's really wonderful to see. I always tell people, we've got a lot of affluent people who have a lot of choices. They could pretty much go anywhere, but they're choosing to come to our neck of the woods, Desert Ridge or wherever it is that they're going. And it's hard to argue that that's a bad thing for us. It's hard to argue that that's not a reflection on what they see when they come visit. And again, they got a lot of options. Right. So, we're excited about what we're seeing. When I was in the state Senate, which you alluded to earlier, it was frustrating because cities would fight over a car dealership, which side of the street would the car dealership be on. And I always thought, the people who shop for the cars, it's just one street. Right. And the people who work at the car dealership, it's just one street. So in both those cases, I was like, you guys got to stop that. It was always very frustrating. And that does seem to have stopped almost completely in my time as a council. We did kind of make a big issue of it at the time in the early 2000s. And so I applaud all the work that you're doing. I think it's been great for the citizenry. I think it really has helped Phoenicians of all stripes. It provides a great place to live and work. We've got a lot of newcomers. We're still one of the fastest growing cities and the fastest growing county. And the people who come here, they want good jobs, and they're seeing what we're doing, and they're coming. I love Phoenix. When I moved here in 1991, it was half the size it was or less. But when you look around at what's here, there's been a measured improvement for sure in the last 30 plus years, and that's a testament to you and folks like you who have done a lot of this work. So sadly, we're out of time. This has flown by, but Chris, really appreciate everything you're doing, and keep doing it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, absolutely. And if you have any questions or comments, please call my office at 602-262-7445 or visit my website at Phoenix.gov/District 2. We look forward to seeing you next time on The Issues.